how to hit the perfect first serve in 5 steps.
So step number 1 is using the ideal grip to serve with. Now this is the continental grip, sometimes known as the chopper grip. It's also known as the hammer grip, and the reason we use this grip is because it allows 2 things to happen. It allows us to hit all the different serves, the slice serve, the kick serve, and the flat serve, and the variations and combinations between all 3 with 1 grip, but it also allows us to use pronation and supination, which is something that happens above just around the time of contact. Now it's very important that we have this grip, because if we don't have that grip, we won't be able to use that supination and that pronation on serve, and we won't be able to hit all the different spins and all the different types of serves with that 1 grip. Easiest way to find that grip is to put your racket out like this, and imagine you're going to shake somebody's hand. You're reaching in that position, and then you grip the racket. So as you can see from this angle, that is the continental grip, and from the bottom, that's the continental grip. Now from this position on the grip, you will have variations. So for a second serve, you might go slightly further around so you can hit more spin, especially on that kick serve. And this is something that the pros do. First serve, they go the normal traditional continental, and the second serve, they might have a slight variation where they twist the hand slightly further around this way, which allows them to hit more spin. So now that we have the correct grip, step number 2 is now the ball toss. Now the ball toss is one of the biggest issues that players around the entire world are facing on their serve. So the first thing we have to understand on that ball toss is that it's not a throw. I'm not throwing the ball in the air, I'm placing the ball in the air. Now once you have that mindset that you're not throwing it, you're placing it, that makes a world of difference straight away. So that first step is that I'm placing the ball. So I'm not throwing the ball, because when I'm throwing the ball, I tend to go quick with my hand. But when I think about placing the ball, I tend to go slower and almost just place it on the spot. Now the ideal height for the ball toss would be about 6 inches or no more than 6 inches higher than your contact point. So if I'm going to make contact here, I don't need to throw the ball up there and let the ball travel down, because the higher I throw the ball, the quicker it's traveling when I'm trying to make contact. If I throw it really high, let's say 2 or 3 times higher than I need it to be, by the time it's coming down, it's actually traveling with quite a lot of speed. So it's hard to hit that ball and to time it perfectly time and time again. The other issue is when you have a high ball toss, it's going to move around a lot. So it's going to go sometimes to the right, sometimes to the left, sometimes behind me. It's hard to get a consistent ball toss the higher you throw the ball. If you can place the ball just around 6 inches higher than the contact point, then that's going to be ideal. The lower, even if you can do it 3 inches, that's even better. The easiest way to place the ball is by holding the ball in my fingers like this. Not in the fingertips, but in my fingers. So my fingers are now gripping the ball. A common issue is players holding it in the palm, and then as they release, the ball is rolling off the fingers. You want to hold it in the fingers, not in the fingertips, but in the fingers, and you almost want to feel that you're placing that ball and you're just releasing with the fingers. That's a very easy way to instantly improve your ball toss. Holding the ball in the fingers and not in the palm. And as I come down with the tossing arm, this left hand, I'm not going too quick. I'm going slowly down and slowly up, because I'm placing the ball. I'm not throwing it, I'm placing it. That's a very easy way to instantly improve your ball toss. Step number 3 is now reaching a good trophy position. Now a good trophy position is where you'll see the players have a slight pause. Some players have a slight pause, some players go through that motion very quickly, but they all reach a position which is very similar. Now the common things that you want to be looking for, the common fundamentals of a good trophy pose would be your tossing arm has stayed up. So your tossing arm is pointing up to the ball. This is to help keep the upper body balanced, but also to allow this shoulder over shoulder to happen. So when I toss the ball, me being a right-hander, the left hand goes up and my right shoulder starts to drop. So my right shoulder starts to go down when my left shoulder starts to come up. So in the trophy pose, my right shoulder is going to be lower than my left shoulder, and later on in the serve, it's going to have that cartwheel shoulder over shoulder. But to begin with, to start in that trophy pose, I'm reaching a position where the right shoulder is down and the left shoulder is up. So I've got my left arm pointing up to the ball, my left shoulder higher than the right shoulder, my right shoulder is dropped and relaxed, and I've got the racket in about a 90-degree angle in this hitting arm. So in this position from here, if I drop the right shoulder and lift the left shoulder, it's going to look something like this. So the tip of the racket would be pointing up to the sky, and you also have a very relaxed arm, just like I was going to throw a ball. So if I was going to throw a tennis ball, I'd reach a position similar to this. Where I'm going to go from that position. I wouldn't go from here, and I wouldn't go from here. So I wouldn't go too far away from my body, I wouldn't come too close to my body with the ball. I'm going to have a little bit of a gap, but it's going to be relaxed, and then from here I'm throwing that ball. This is the exact same thing that we want to do on the serve. We want to reach a position where we're feeling that from here I'm now throwing the racket up into the ball, up into that contact point. So the easiest way to find that trophy pose, and easiest way to find an ideal one, would be if you start off with both hands like this, you bend this hitting arm to about a 90-degree angle, and from here I now just drop my shoulder. So I've got that tilt, I've got the shoulder over shoulder, and I've also got a perfect throwing position in my hitting arm, which is my right hand. Now from here, I also want to use my legs if I can. So some players, they email us and they say, I'm an older player and I don't have the power to use my legs. That's okay, but if you can use your legs, then you definitely want to, because that's where the energy starts. The force from the legs is what drives off the ground. So the explosive leg drive, that goes through the legs, into the trunk, up through the core, all the way up into the shoulders, and then finally into the arm and then into the racket. But it all starts from the ground up. If we can use the leg drive, 100% you want to get into a good knee bend, whichever stance you use. Some players out there might be using the platform, where you're in that position here. Some players might be using the pinpoint, where you're in that position. Either way, you want to feel that you're in a good knee bend if you can, and you want to feel that your arm is in that throwing position, almost like the Nike tick that you see on the Nike clothing. So that position right here. Now something very important to note is that when I reach that trophy position, we aren't stopping, we aren't having a big pause. You might have a brief pause, you might have a very slight pause when you get to that position, but you're not holding this position for too long. And the reason behind this is, firstly, when we start the service motion, we start, however we get into that trophy position, we have that swing path. Now I'm building momentum, I'm creating momentum to get the racket up into that position. If I have a pause, it's almost like the whole motion is reset. It's starting from scratch, because I'm getting into that trophy position and I'm stopping. So it's almost like this part, there's no reason to have that part. I might as well serve right from that position. The other thing is, the longer I stay in that knee bend, the more power I'm losing from the legs, the more explosive power I'm losing from holding that position. Now if I were to jump, and I were to jump as high as I could, I wouldn't go into the knee bend and stop. I'd go down and I'd come straight up. And that's the exact same thing we want to feel we're doing on our serve. We're not having that big pause, we're not going down and pausing, we're going down, up, straight away. So down and up. The more explosive we can make that, the better for our serve. So once again, we're reaching the trophy position, but it's just for that brief second. Some players like Stan Wawrinka, they might reach that position, have a slight pause, and then drive out. But he isn't holding that position for 2 or 3 seconds. He's holding it for split seconds. He's just barely passing through that position, but he is reaching that position. That's the key. You want to reach that position. A lot of coaches, they'll say, don't get into a trophy pose. Now, by not reaching the trophy pose, what else are you going to do? You're going to go through the motion, and the racket might never reach an ideal throwing position. This is the ideal throwing position for me. once I get into that position, I don't want to stop there. I want to go through that motion, but I want to reach that position. I don't want to be doing this on my serve and then having a pause where I drop the racket behind my back or so on. So I'm reaching that trophy position, but I'm not staying there for too long. And step number 4 is using pronation on your serve. So prior to contact, we've reached that trophy position. Now from here, because of my leg drive, if I have a leg drive, the legs will drive up. As I've already said in the video, the energy then goes through the trunk into the shoulder. Now the racket starts to drop, and then from here I now have this almost like this part of the racket, the edge of the racket is leading forward onto the oncoming ball. So in that position, that is where my wrist is slightly in a supinated position. So this is supination on serve. So what exactly is pronation and supination? Pronation is where my palm is facing downwards like this. Now if I turn my forearm the opposite way to facing up to the sky, now my forearm is in a fully supinated position. So if I grab the racket now, this is fully supinated position. My racket and my arm cannot turn any further than this. So this is prior to contact. Now some players never reach that full supinated position, but they'll reach a slight supinated position. So from here, now my hand is up to the sky, supination. I'm pronating now, but I haven't fully pronated, but I am pronating. So I'm pronating, now I've reached the kind of medium zone, and now I fully pronate, where the palm is fully facing to the ground. So on the serve, it's going to be like supination. I'm pronating now, but I haven't fully pronated at contact. And after contact, I fully pronate. So once again, supination, pronating, and then fully pronated. And the issue is, a lot of players never reach that full pronation mode. They reach a position like this, and then they come down with the racket flapped, like so. If you want the full range of motion and to be able to hit all the different spins, you want to go from here to here, and the only way to do this is by having that continental grip. If I were to do that with a forehand grip, for instance, let's say I'm using a semi-western forehand grip to serve. If I do that same motion, the racket's going to be like this, and if I hit a serve, it's going to go off to the right side of the court. So I need that continental grip to be able to go supination, pronating, fully pronated. So that's exactly why we use a continental grip, and this is in fact what allows us to hit the different spins with that same grip, because prior to contact, all we're doing is slightly changing the racket angle to hit the different spins and the different serves. And step number 5 is having a good relaxed follow through and finish. So a lot of players that I see, even some players that I coach, when I have my first lesson with them, I see that they serve and they have a very stiff finish, or they don't finish all the way. Now if you look at most of the top players, they all finish, for the right-handers, most of them finish around their left hip with the racket head. So they're going from contact point, pronating, and then they're coming down in that relaxed fashion. To their leg, to the left hip. Now what this does is it allows the body to relax the arm in the most natural way. If I were to throw a ball and I was to stop like this, that's a lot of stress on my shoulder and on my elbow. If I were to do that with a serve, it's the exact same thing. There's a lot of stress there. So after I hit the ball, I want to be able to hit, still accelerate through the contact point, but then relax in a nice way at the end of the serve. And by finishing near your left pocket, you're allowing that to happen. So I'm not forcing it, I'm not doing this, but I'm allowing it to happen in a relaxed way. This will save your shoulder, this will save you from getting injured hopefully, and this will help you to accelerate through the contact point and give you a better serve. So here's a brief recap. We have step number 1, using the continental grip, which will allow you to hit the different spins, the different serves without having to change the grip, but also allow you to use supination and pronation later in the motion. Step number 2 is having a good ball toss no higher than 6 inches above your contact point. Step number 3 is reaching a good trophy position, not pausing there, but reaching that position almost like you're going to throw a ball. So reaching an ideal throwing position. Step number 4 is using supination and pronation during contact, which if you are using a continental grip should happen naturally, and if you are changing your grip from a forehand grip over to a continental, it's going to take some time, but eventually you'll start getting the feel of pronating during the contact point. And step number 5, having a good relaxed follow through that will allow you to slow down the racket in a natural way, but also allow you to accelerate during the contact point.
How to hit the perfect kick serve in 3 steps.
So step number 1 is having the correct grip, and this is the continental grip, or even slightly further round to almost an Eastern backhand grip. So if you're a single-handed backhand player, you'll know that the Eastern backhand grip is where the index knuckle is on that top bevel. So you wouldn't go as far as the extreme Eastern backhand grip, but you want to be somewhere between the Eastern backhand grip and the continental grip. And this will allow for the proper mechanics to happen above your head, which will allow you to hit the kick serve. If you don't have this grip, if I had a forehand grip for instance, and I tried to hit a kick serve, and that same motion that I need, the brushing motion and going from the bottom left side of the ball up to the top right side of the ball, if I'm a right-handed player, I couldn't do that with a forehand grip. So if I was trying to do that with a forehand grip, my strings would be really open up to the sky when I made contact, and the ball would just fly off. So I need that continental grip to allow for the supination to happen prior to contact, but also to allow the pronation to happen after contact, which is crucial on getting this good kick serve. So step number 1, having the correct grip, having that continental grip. This will allow for everything else to happen on that kick serve. Step number 2 is now the ball toss. So for a normal serve, I might throw the ball slightly in front of my head and slightly inside the court so that I can actually go through the ball and hit a flatter serve if I'm going for a first serve, or a slice serve if I want to open up the court, especially on the deuce side. But on the second serve, on the kick serve, we want to throw the ball more to your left if you're a right-handed player. So on the baseline, we want to throw the ball more to our left and slightly behind our head, which will allow us to hit the ball from 8 o'clock if the ball was a clock. So imagine this ball is now a clock, so you've got the top 12 o'clock all the way to 6 o'clock. For a kick serve, if you're looking at the ball from this angle, you're trying to hit the ball from the bottom left hand side of the ball, which is around 7 or 8 o'clock, up to around 1 or 2 o'clock. Now the higher you want the ball to bounce, you're going to start a little bit lower, so you might start at 7 o'clock and go up to 1 o'clock, but you won't have that same twist on the ball, the same kick on the ball as if you go from 8 to 2 o'clock on the ball. So it's either 7 to 1 if you want a higher bounce and higher net clearance, or 8 to 2 o'clock if you want slightly lower but you want a more extreme kick on the bounce. So now I'm focused on the ball toss being more to my left so that I can hit the ball from 8 to 2 o'clock. Let's have a look. And I'm not going full power, I'm just trying to get that brushing motion from 8 to 2 o'clock on the ball. As you can see, it's nice and high after the bounce, even though this court isn't very much like a proper clay court or a hard court that would actually bounce a lot higher. And step number 3 to having the perfect kick is how you actually hit the ball. So we've spoken about the ball toss going more to your left, but what about the actual mechanics of the body? So for a kick serve, you want to be sideways on when you finish the serve. When the ball's left your strings, you still want to be in that sideways on position. If I open up to the court, I'm going to hit either a flat serve or a slice serve. I need my shoulders to be sideways on to the net so that I can do that real shoulder over shoulder motion. So the shoulder over shoulder is almost like a seesaw action. If you've ever taken your kids to the play park and you're on the seesaw where one child is on one side and the other child is on the other side, and one goes up, one goes down, one goes up, one goes down. That's the same motion you want to have, especially on the kick serve, but on all serves. You want to feel that the right shoulder is dropping when you get to around the trophy position, and then when you're making contact, this left shoulder is now coming down and the right shoulder is going up. And that's the motion we want to have on the kick serve. The more we can do that motion on the kick serve, the better we can hit that kick serve. If we don't have that shoulder over shoulder, we'll lack the real power and the real spin. So it's that right shoulder dropping in the trophy position here, and then you're having the racket drop, you're having the racket traveling up to contact. That's when the left shoulder starts to come down and the right shoulder starts to go up to the ball. What I like to tell my students is almost imagine you're hitting the ball with your right shoulder, and this will really force you to go from low with the right shoulder to high, and then staying sideways on is also the other big crucial factor that will help you hit that great kick serve. So now it's all about step number 3, which is me staying sideways on to the net for as long as I can and working on that shoulder over shoulder action. So I'm not opening up, I'm not going from here forwards with my body, I'm staying sideways on, and I'm allowing my racket to go from the left side of my body to the right side of my body. So on a normal serve you're hitting more through the ball. So my racket path would be from here this way, going towards my desired target. On the kick serve, it's traveling more in line with the baseline. So from left, from this way, up, contact, and then that way. And the more I can do that motion from left to right quickly, the more aggressive the kick will be after the bounce. So let's have a look. And the faster I can do that shoulder over shoulder, the more power it's going to give me and the more pop I'm going to get off that bounce. Now, a very simple trick that you can use to help yourself stay sideways on longer and actually get more of a shorter bounce in the service box, more of an acute angle in that box, is by doing something that Federer likes to do, and that's change the position of his feet. Federer obviously uses the platform stance so his feet don't come together as in the pinpoint, so he keeps his feet apart, similar with Novak Djokovic and also players like Pete Sampras. And what he does when he's in that platform stance, he might change the position of the back foot or the front foot depending on the serve he's hitting. So Federer starts off like this on the front foot. As he comes here, this back foot can move, so he can be moving this back foot at will depending on the serve he's going to go. If he's going to go more for a T serve, he might end up moving it more in line so that he can really open up prior to contact. If he's going for more of a kick serve, this back foot might end up going further back. Or another trick that he does, he actually starts on the front foot, he comes back, and then this front foot lifts off the ground and he can change position with that front foot as well. So he changes the position of the front foot, which then changes the position of the upper body. So if I wanted more a flat serve down the tee, I might end up with my feet like this, from here in line, then I can go down the tee quite comfortably. If I want more of a kick serve, I can then do the same setup, but as I'm in this position here, this back foot now moves slightly more to the left side of the court, which allows me to stay a lot more sideways on and turn my back to the net much more. So I'm changing the foot position here for the kick serve. So that change of the foot position is going to allow me to hit the shorter angle, or if I want to go down the tee, I can hit a little bit more in line with the feet. So there you have it, guys. 3 steps to hitting the perfect kick serve. So step number 1, once again, the grip. Step number 2, the ball toss. And step number 3, hitting the ball from 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock while staying sideways on with your shoulders and having that shoulder over shoulder motion, but also playing around with the feet position and the foot position, especially this back foot, playing around with how far you can bring it round, especially if you use a platform stance. Now if you use a pinpoint stance, you can still play around with a foot position. So if I'm using a pinpoint and I'm in this position here for a normal serve, for a kick serve I might try and turn my feet slightly further around so that I end up with my back turned more to the court, which will allow me to hit that real extreme kick and be sideways on when I hit it.
how to hit the perfect slice serve in 3 steps.
But before we get into the steps, why would we use a slice serve? Now a slice serve is where you're basically cutting around the top and the outside of the ball. So if the ball was a clock, 12 o'clock at the top, 6 o'clock at the bottom, for a right-handed player we're hitting the ball somewhere around 1 or 2 o'clock on the ball. Now the reason that we use a slice serve is on the deuce side, if we slice it well, especially if we slice it quite short in the box, it's going to be moving away from the opponent. So the returner on the other end, my opponent now, he's going to have to be cutting off the ball, or he's going to be chasing the ball to his right to actually hit the return. So the more slice I can do, the more it's going to open up the court. Now on the ad side, I can use that same slice serve down the tee. Oh my god. Now another reason to use a good slice serve is to jam players in the body. So a good slice serve into the body, especially on the backhand wing, is a very good weapon to have, and it's something that a lot of pros perfect. They perfect going between the kick and the slice, alternating between both on the second serve. So they'll hit one really good kick serve, the player will move out, they'll expect it moving away from them, and then they'll hit the slice serve, which then jams them in the body. So it's a very good way to use for a second serve, especially if you don't have a good kick serve. So on the kick serve, if you have a good kick, that would be the most reliable second serve that you could have. But a slice serve is close behind, because you can actually slice the ball but still get quite a nice margin over the net, and also the spin is then going to bring it back in. And I teach it to a lot of female players who don't have the power and the strength to do actually a good kick serve, so I develop that slice serve for them so that they have a safe, reliable second serve. So step number 1 to having a perfect slice serve is all about the grip. Now if you use a forehand grip, and I try to slice this ball now, I'm using a semi-western forehand grip, I'm trying to cut the outside of the ball here. I managed to get it in, but it's a very weak serve, and if my opponent's quite a good player, they're going to be moving in and crushing that type of serve. So I need the continental grip, which is this grip, the hammer grip, the chopper grip as some players call it. So we use the continental grip for this slice serve, and this will allow us prior to contact to be on edge with the racket head. So the racket head will be like this prior to contact, and at contact we open the string slightly, but they're still slightly on edge so that we can hit the outside top right hand corner of the ball. If I'm not using that continental grip, it will be very hard for me to hit a really good aggressive slice serve time and time again. So most pros serve with a continental grip. If you aren't using a continental grip already, I advise you to start moving slowly round until you master that grip. So now we have the grip. Step number 2 is now all about the ball toss and where we're going to make contact with the ball. So if you imagine that this ball is a clock, once again, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I'm looking at it from my angle, not from the camera's angle. If I want to hit a good slice serve, I'm aiming to hit the ball somewhere around 1 or 2 o'clock, 1:30 if you imagine the small hand on the clock. So I want to be hitting this part of the ball. Now some coaches will teach you to hit 3 o'clock to really spin it. Now the trouble with that serve, if I hit 3 o'clock, I'm going to be going around the outside of the ball. I'm going to have the slice on the outside of the ball, but it's not going to have that same dip. So to hit a more aggressive one, we want to be hitting somewhere on top. Now when I say hit at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock on the ball, I don't mean to actually go with your strings here at contact, because if I do that, this is what's going to happen. The ball's going to go right down into the ground and it's going to have no power. Now when I say hitting the ball around 1 or 2 o'clock, I don't mean hitting the outside of that ball, I mean hitting the front of the ball, but around that 1 or 2 o'clock spot. If we hit the outside of the ball, it's going to go right down into the ground and off to the left side of the court. I want to be hitting the ball at around 1 or 2 o'clock, but at the front side of the ball. If I do this, that will give me that good dip into the court and the angle and the width on the serve. Now you're probably wondering about the ball toss. A lot of coaches will teach you to throw it more to your right, and this does work because if I throw the ball more to my right, my angle of the strings, the racket angle, is going to be slightly more on edge. Now it's very important on the slice serve that I'm leading with this side of the racket. The edge of the racket is traveling up to the ball first. If I travel with my strings like this, I'm going to hit a flat serve. So I want my strings to be like this on edge, and then as I'm making contact, it opens slightly. So if I throw more to my right, this is a much easier action to achieve. However, by doing this, by throwing it more to my right, my opponent on that side might see that the slice serve is coming, and then they can react before I've even hit the ball. So eventually you can start off with throwing the ball more to your right so that you can get that extreme slice serve like so, but eventually you want to be hitting the serve with the same or the similar ball toss time and time again so that your opponent on the other side cannot read where you're serving. So if we look at a player like Federer, he always maintains a very similar ball position on the serve, so his ball toss is always around the same spot. Now Pete Sampras, one of the greatest servers of all time, he would throw his ball in line with the baseline. So his ball toss the left arm would come up like this in line with the baseline. Now as he's tossing, he could hit the different serves with that same ball toss. If he throws it and hits the ball around here, he can hit a slice serve. If he waits for the ball to come a little bit more in front of his body, he can hit the flat serve. And if he wants a kick with that same ball toss, he can let it fall slightly behind his head and hit a kick serve. So the same ball toss time and time again, but changing where he's actually making contact with the ball and changing the racket angle. A lot of the differences on the serve happen just because of the different angle of how we make contact. A flat serve would be with my strings facing my target, a slice serve would be slightly on edge, and a kick serve would be my racket traveling upwards at contact. So try to keep the ball toss as similar as you can to your normal serve. So here I'm going to work on step number 1, which is having the correct grip, the continental grip, and step number 2, which is trying to make contact around 1 or 2 o'clock on that ball. All I'm thinking about are those two things in this moment. Now that was a nice little angle, and step number 3 now is to get a bit more power and to get a bit more width on that slice. So step number 3 is now really using my body and my leg drive to drive forwards into the court. So I'm going to change my ball toss slightly. I'm going to toss the ball slightly more in front than what I've just been working on. Now the reason I want to throw the ball slightly more in front is that my body's then chasing after the ball slightly. I'm driving with my legs, but also I want to feel that this right shoulder is actually coming towards the ball first. So I'm almost throwing my right shoulder into that ball. I'm almost imagining that I'm going to hit the ball with my right shoulder. Now what this will do is really focus on that rotation. So I've reached my trophy position, and as you can see my back is slightly turned to the net. Now from this position I want to now feel that this right shoulder is really rotating, coming forward, and this is almost leading the way to the ball. As I hit, I'm now opening up fully, so I've done a nice 180 turn with my shoulders from here, from this position here to that position where my right shoulder is fully facing the net. So let's have a look. So ball toss more in front and really throwing the right shoulder into that ball. Still working on step number 1 and step number 2, which is having the continental grip and hitting the ball at 1 or 2 o'clock. Now there, I got the power, I got the slice, but I want it a little bit shorter, so I'm going to try to really focus on that 1 or 2 o'clock here. Slightly shorter on that one, but it was slightly wide, so I have to still snap down a little bit more. And before you actually hit the slice serve, and when you're working on it, you can actually go over those steps in your head again. Correct grip, continental, contact point 1 or 2 o'clock on the ball, throwing my shoulder into the serve. On that slice serve, I actually really focused on hitting the ball and then coming down on the ball. So really snapping, not my wrist, but snapping on top of my racket and allowing that snap to happen, which will then give me that short, acute angle that I'm looking for. And one of the great things about a good slice serve is even if my opponent knows it's coming, even if they read it, if I do toss it slightly more to my right, they still have to deal with it. And they're so far off the court that unless they hit a really great return, either down the line for a clean winner or a really good short angle, I have the upper hand in that rally straight away. If I have hit an aggressive serve, if I hit a slice serve and it's a bit weaker, that gives them the chance to take control of the rally. If I hit with quite a lot of pace and I move them off that court past the tram lines or into the tram lines, I'll have the upper hand in that rally. Now let's go over those 3 steps once again. Step number 1, having the continental grip. Step number 2, the ball toss, trying to hit the ball somewhere around 1 or 2 o'clock if the ball was a clock. Once again, you're not hitting the outside at 1 or 2 o'clock, you're hitting the front face of the 1 or 2 o'clock. Step number 3, really using your body and really throwing your right shoulder into that serve if you're a right-handed player, your left shoulder if you're a lefty. So thanks for watching the video, guys. If you have enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below as well, subscribe to the channel, make sure you turn on the notifications so you get our newest videos as well, and share it with your friends. Share it with anyone who you think would benefit from having a great slice serve, maybe a doubles partner, maybe someone that you enjoy playing with. Share it with them. All the best, guys, and see you soon.